The protagonist of this story is a black barista who works at a popular coffee shop located in a busy area of the city. He is a seemingly ordinary individual, without any obvious traits that would draw special attention from those around him. To many people, he is just another employee working tirelessly behind the counter, preparing coffee, taking orders, and ensuring that customers have a pleasant experience. He doesn't stand out, and that's exactly how he likes it. The character of the barista is portrayed as calm, humble, and personable. His life revolves around simple, everyday tasks. Yet, beneath the surface, there is much more to him. An individual who has faced discrimination, prejudice, and inequality, but continues to go about his work with patience and dignity. Despite the apparent simplicity of his job, there is a quiet strength about him that comes from his perseverance in the face of adversity. He has learned to endure the subtle jabs and microaggressions that often come his way as a black man working in an environment where he is looked down upon. His resilience is not immediately apparent. He doesn't wear his struggles on his sleeve. He simply gets on with the job, always treating others with respect, no matter how poorly they treat him in return. The barista is kind, courteous, and efficient in his work. He is always willing to go the extra mile for his customers, providing them with a warm smile and excellent service. His co-workers respect him, but they too are often oblivious to the underlying racial tensions and inequalities that shape his experiences. He blends into the background, allowing others to take the spotlight. But this understated existence is about to be shattered. The coffee shop where the barista works is located in a trendy, upscale neighborhood of the city, where wealthy professionals, young entrepreneurs, and influencers frequent the establishment for their morning coffee fix. The coffee shop has a reputation for being a place where people can network and conduct business in a relaxed, stylish environment. It is often filled with people on laptops, having meetings, or discussing deals over a cup of overpriced espresso. The atmosphere is both welcoming and elitist, as it caters to a specific social class, one that values appearances and status. On one typical morning, the barista is going about his usual routine, preparing drinks and greeting customers as they come in. Everything seems ordinary until a distinguished-looking man walks in, tall, dressed in a well-tailored suit, carrying an air of superiority about him. This man is none other than the CEO of a prominent tech company in the area. He is used to having things his way, and he clearly expects to be treated with a level of respect that surpasses what others would receive. He is accustomed to having his demands met without question. The moment the CEO steps up to the counter to place his order, the barista greets him with a polite smile and asks for his order in the usual manner. The CEO responds, but there is something condescending in his tone as he listens to the barista speak. The barista's voice is warm, friendly, but also slightly accented, reflecting the way he grew up in his neighborhood. The CEO, without missing a beat, scoffs at the barista's accent and snickers under his breath. It's not the first time the barista has been mocked for his voice, but it stings nonetheless. He has learned to ignore such insults, to put on a brave face and continue with his duties, but this time feels different. The CEO, feeling emboldened by his position of power, begins to openly mock the barista. He mimics his accent and gestures exaggeratedly, laughing to himself as if the barista were some kind of joke. The other customers around the counter glance at the scene, some amused, others uncomfortable, but no one steps in to defend the barista. Instead, they watch in silence, many pretending not to notice the subtle racism unfolding in front of them. This moment, though seemingly insignificant to the CEO, marks the beginning of a deepening conflict for the barista. For him, this is not just about being mocked for his accent. It is about something deeper. A societal structure that values his worth only in relation to his utility as a service provider, not as a person. The mocking laughter of the CEO is a stark reminder of the racial and social inequality that still permeates every corner of society, even in the most progressive and inclusive environments. As the barista tries to maintain his composure, he begins to feel the weight of the situation more deeply. The mockery, although subtle, cuts deep. It is not the first time he has faced racial prejudice, but each instance, no matter how small, chips away at his spirit. The feeling of being less than, of being diminished by others simply because of the color of his skin and the way he speaks, is a constant presence in his life. It's a reality that he has come to accept, but not one that he enjoys. What the CEO and the other customers fail to realize is that their casual racism is not an isolated incident. It is part of a larger issue, An ongoing cycle of discrimination that permeates the workplace, the media, and even social interactions in public spaces. The barista may have been subjected to a single incident of mockery, but for people of color like him, these types of experiences accumulate over time. They are reminded daily of their place in society, often in ways that are subtle and insidious. The barista continues to prepare the drinks, his mind swirling with frustration and hurt. He wonders how much longer he can continue to endure this type of treatment. How much longer can he smile and serve people who view him as inferior? He doesn't know the answer yet, but deep down he knows that this moment, the mocking laughter of the CEO, the silent judgment from the customers, is a breaking point. This time something will be different. He can feel it. The tension continues to simmer under the surface. The barista does not react outwardly to the CEO's insults, choosing instead to remain professional. He knows that reacting in anger will only reinforce the stereotype of the angry black man, something he cannot afford in an environment where people are quick to dismiss him as nothing more than a stereotype. However, as he goes about his day, the mockery lingers in his mind. He recalls the way the CEO had belittled him so casually, as though his worth was tied solely to his ability to serve. This is a moment that many people of color can relate to, an everyday reminder that no matter how hard they work, no matter how professional they are, they will always be judged by the color of their skin. The story is just beginning, but this early interaction has set the stage for something much bigger. The barista is no longer just a bystander in this situation. He is a participant in a larger, more complex struggle against systemic inequality, and the next steps in his journey will reveal just how far he is willing to go to challenge the status quo and demand respect. As the day wears on, the barista resolves that he will not let this incident define him. He has been pushed to the brink, but he is not broken. There is a quiet strength within him that has yet to be revealed. He knows that he has the power to change his circumstances, but it will require more than just enduring the mistreatment. It will require action. The barista does not lash out in anger, nor does he retreat into silence. Instead, he chooses to take a step back, reflect on the situation and plan for what's to come. He knows that there are forces beyond his control, people with power, with influence and with privilege, who will continue to mock him, to belittle him. But he also knows that change can come from the most unlikely places, and that he does not have to accept the limitations imposed upon him by others. The story is far from over. The tension that has been building will soon give way to a shift, one that will surprise both the CEO and the audience watching. For now, the barista remains composed, but the seeds of change have been planted. The question is not whether he will rise above this insult, but how he will do it. The journey toward justice, toward fairness, and toward the reclaiming of his dignity has only just begun. The atmosphere at the coffee shop feels stifling. After the mocking encounter with the CEO, the barista tries to shake off the incident, but it lingers in his mind. Every interaction that day feels like a reminder of the insidious racial microaggressions he's faced throughout his life. It's not just the CEO's laughter, it's the way he was dismissed, belittled for something as simple as his accent, something that shouldn't even matter in the context of their exchange. The more he thinks about it, the more the sting intensifies and he finds it harder to just let it go. As the days pass, the barista begins to notice more subtle instances of disrespect. It's not just the CEO who mocks him, it's the general public. One customer looks down at him while ordering, as if his existence were nothing more than a brief inconvenience. Another comments on his appearance, offering unwanted advice on how to move up in life, assuming that someone like him could not possibly be satisfied working in a coffee shop for the rest of his life. These interactions aren't as direct or aggressive as the CEO's mocking, but they carry a quiet violence of their own. They are the kind of insults that many people of color face every day, often unnoticed by the privileged. The insidious nature of these jabs is what makes them all the more dangerous. They seep into your psyche, becoming a part of your daily existence. The barista, though he continues to perform his job with unwavering professionalism, begins to feel the weight of these experiences. The tension builds slowly as he finds himself resenting the very place he once felt safe, the place where he once felt like he could simply be himself without fear of judgment. His patience is starting to wear thin. There's only so much humiliation one can endure before it begins to chip away at their sense of dignity. And yet, despite the mounting pressure, the barista holds his ground. He knows that reacting with anger will only play into the stereotypes that people like the CEO, and even his fellow customers, expect from him. Instead, he resolves to stay calm, but he begins planning his next move, thinking carefully about how he can take control of his own narrative. The tension between the barista and the people around him continues to escalate. It's not just the customers that treat him poorly, his colleagues too inadvertently contribute to his sense of alienation. His co-workers are not malicious, but they are blind to the systemic racism that the barista faces daily. They joke about how he always seems so patient, always willing to help, but they don't understand why. They don't see the quiet torment in his eyes or the unspoken exhaustion that he carries with him every day. One day, as he prepares a coffee for a particularly difficult customer, he overhears a conversation between two co-workers. They're talking about the new CEO, the same one who mocked him, and how he's an important figure in the city. One co-worker mentions how lucky the barista is to even serve someone of his stature. The barista tries to brush it off, but the comment stings. He realizes that his co-workers, much like the CEO, have a distorted view of him. A view shaped by the color of his skin and the work he does, not by his abilities or his worth as a person. He begins to feel more like an invisible pawn in a game of privilege and power, where his worth is measured by how much he can serve others, not by what he can contribute to society as a whole. As these realizations sink in, the barista begins to feel more and more like an outsider. He starts to withdraw both physically and emotionally. The coffee shop, once a place where he felt comfortable, now feels suffocating. Every morning as he walks into work, he can't shake the feeling that he is being watched, judged, and scrutinized. Every smile from a customer feels like an attempt to placate him, to make him feel small. The unspoken rule that he is less than everyone else has been etched into his mind, and it grows harder to ignore each day. But despite this growing sense of alienation, the barista refuses to let it consume him. He starts paying closer attention to the people around him, studying their behavior, and observing the ways in which they interact with him. He notices the little things, the way they look at him when they think he's not paying attention, the way they treat him differently than they treat others. These observations, though painful, give him clarity. He starts to see that the problem is not just with the CEO or the customers, it's with the system that perpetuates these attitudes. It's a system that allows people like him to be treated as less than human, as invisible, as dispensable. Though the tension continues to rise, the barista refuses to break. His resilience becomes more evident as he begins to actively search for ways to change the narrative. He refuses to be a passive participant in the story of his own life. Instead, he begins to think strategically, preparing for the day when he can confront the forces that have held him down for so long. He starts gathering information, quietly observing the dynamics of the coffee shop and the people who frequent it. He learns about the customers, who they are, what they do, and how they behave. He studies their habits, learning how to anticipate their needs before they even ask. But he also starts looking for ways to make himself heard, even if it means stepping out of his comfort zone. He knows that in order to truly confront the discrimination he faces, he needs to rise above it, to show the world that he is more than just a barista, more than just a person to be laughed at or dismissed. One day, during a particularly busy shift, the barista finds himself face to face with the CEO again. This time the CEO doesn't mock him. He simply places his order with the same air of entitlement as before. But this time something is different. The barista doesn't feel the same weight of humiliation. Instead, he feels a quiet sense of power, knowing that he is in control of how he reacts to this person. He is no longer just the guy behind the counter, he is someone with the potential to change everything. He smiles at the CEO, offers the same courteous service, but in his mind he is preparing for something bigger. As the barista continues to navigate the challenges of his day-to-day life, he begins to develop a sense of anticipation. He knows that change is coming, it's inevitable. He begins to sense that the time is near for him to take action. Whether that means standing up to the CEO or finding a way to expose the systematic inequalities that govern the coffee shop environment, he is determined to make a difference. The turning point is on the horizon. The barista knows that he can no longer accept the status quo, no longer tolerate the subtle racism and microaggressions that have been part of his daily existence. He begins to prepare himself for a confrontation, one that will require not just patience but also courage. He is no longer just the barista. He is a force to be reckoned with. The rising action of this story has now reached its peak. The tension between the barista and the world around him is at its highest, and it is only a matter of time before the conflict comes to a head. The barista's patience, resilience, and quiet strength are building toward a moment of reckoning, a moment that will change everything. The tension between the barista and the world around him reaches a boiling point. It's been weeks since the CEO mocked him, weeks filled with silent frustration and quiet endurance. The mocking, the looks, the subtle racism, all of it has accumulated within him like a pressure cooker, building up with each passing day. The barista is no longer the same man who walked into the coffee shop months ago. The constant humiliation has hardened him, shaping his resolve into something far stronger than anyone could have predicted. Then one fateful morning the CEO walks in again. This time there's a difference. He is more arrogant than ever, flaunting his power with each step he takes. As he approaches the counter, he offers the same condescending smile, expecting the usual courtesy from the barista, the same polite service that comes without question. The barista, however, has no intention of submitting this time. It's as if a switch has been flipped. The barista greets the CEO with the same calm demeanor, but this time, there's a glint of something else in his eyes, a hint of defiance. He asks the CEO for his order, but his voice is different now. There is no uncertainty, no hesitation. For the first time, he doesn't care what the CEO thinks of him. He knows his worth and he is done being treated as inferior. The CEO makes his usual remarks about the coffee, asking for an extra shot of espresso, but when the barista hands over the cup, he makes a subtle comment about how he should speak more clearly if he wants to be taken seriously. The words hang in the air for a moment, and something within the barista snaps. This time, instead of letting the insult roll off his shoulders, he takes a deep breath and responds. "Funny," he says, his tone measured but firm, "I've been taking orders from people like you for years. But I'm starting to realize that it's not the way I speak, but the way people like you listen, that's the problem." For a split second the CEO freezes. He's caught off guard, not expecting such a response from someone he sees as subservient. The barista, feeling the power of his own words, takes another step forward. "You see, I've been listening to people like you for too long, and I'm starting to think that maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe it's time for people like you to start listening to us." The words hit the CEO like a punch to the gut. He opens his mouth to respond, but the barista interrupts him, his voice now louder, more confident. "And if you think my accent is a joke, maybe you should realize that I'm not the one with the issue. It's your attitude that's the problem. You come into this coffee shop and treat people like they're beneath you, but let me tell you something. I'm not beneath anyone. Not anymore." The barista's words echo in the coffee shop, and for the first time in a long while, the customers stop talking. They watch the scene unfold and the silence is deafening. The CEO stands there, his face turning red, clearly caught off guard by the barista's defiance. He opens his mouth to say something but the words never come. In that moment, the barista knows that he has taken control of the situation. This is his moment. He's no longer the invisible servant in the background. He has risen above the insults, the mockery, the prejudice. The barista has found his voice and with it he has taken back his dignity. The CEO, for all his arrogance, knows when he's been bested. He mutters something under his breath, clearly embarrassed by the public confrontation. He turns away, leaving the coffee shop without another word. The customers, many of whom had been quietly watching, now look at each other, some with expressions of disbelief, others with quiet admiration. The barista has made his stand, and it's clear that he has won. For the barista, the victory is not just about embarrassing the CEO. It's not even about getting the last word. It's about reclaiming his sense of self-worth, about standing up to the oppression and discrimination he has endured for far too long. He has finally found the strength to speak out, to demand respect, and in doing so, he has become something far more powerful than he ever imagined. But the consequences of this act are not immediate. The CEO may have left in shame, but the true test of the barista's resolve will come in the days and weeks that follow. He will face backlash from some customers, who will inevitably view him as rude or disrespectful. He may even face retaliation from his employer, who could choose to side with the powerful CEO over their own employee. The road ahead will be difficult, but the barista is ready for it. He knows that he can no longer allow himself to be silenced, no longer allow others to treat him as less than. As the day wears on, the atmosphere in the coffee shop shifts. The other employees, who had been unaware of the barista's internal struggles, now look at him with new respect. They understand that something significant has happened, though they may not fully grasp the depth of the barista's journey. The barista doesn't say much, he simply continues to do his work, but there is a new sense of purpose in his actions. He knows that change is possible, that it starts with one person standing up and speaking out. And he has done that. The aftermath of the confrontation is not as smooth as the barista would like. While some customers have silently supported him, others begin to avoid the coffee shop, opting for a more polite establishment where the barista's actions are seen as unprofessional. Rumors start to spread about the incident, with some customers even leaving negative reviews online. The barista feels the weight of their judgment, but he refuses to back down. He is resolute in his belief that standing up to the CEO was the right thing to do. A few days later, the barista is called into the manager's office. He is told that the company is receiving complaints about his behavior, and that he may face disciplinary action. The barista feels his heart sink, but he remains calm. He knows that this is part of the price of speaking out, but he is ready to pay it. To his surprise, however, the manager does not reprimand him. Instead, the manager tells him that while the company does not condone confrontational behavior, they also cannot ignore the issue of racial discrimination. The barista's actions, though bold, have sparked a much-needed conversation within the company about the treatment of their employees, particularly those who are people of color. The manager promises to take steps to address the issue, including holding sensitivity training for all employees and establishing a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. It's a small step, but it's a step toward change. The barista's victory, though not without its challenges, has set in motion a ripple effect. People around him begin to see him in a new light, not as just a barista, but as someone who stood up for what was right, someone who refused to be silent in the face of injustice. The respect he had longed for finally begins to come his way, not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. For the barista, the real victory is the empowerment he feels. He no longer feels like a victim of circumstance. He is no longer just the person behind the counter, the invisible worker who serves coffee to others without being seen. He is a person with agency, with the ability to change the narrative. His voice matters, and he knows that he can use it to bring about change not just for himself, but for others who are also marginalized. As the story concludes, the barista reflects on his journey. He knows that the battle against discrimination is far from over, but he is no longer afraid. He has learned that true empowerment comes not from silence or submission, but from standing up and speaking out. His voice, once muted, is now a powerful tool for change. The barista smiles to himself as he prepares another cup of coffee, knowing that he has made a difference, not just in his own life, but in the lives of those who will come after him. His journey is just beginning, but the future is full of possibilities. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation with the CEO leaves a mix of reactions. The coffee shop, once a place of routine interactions, now feels different for the barista. There's a subtle tension in the air, a quiet whispering that follows him as he walks between the tables, a new weight on his shoulders. His confrontation with the CEO has made ripples, and while some customers have openly expressed support, others have distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the boldness of his actions. The reactions are mixed, and the coffee shop's atmosphere seems to reflect this. But in the midst of this uncertainty, there are also signs of change. Several co-workers who had never given much thought to the racial dynamics at play start to approach him, quietly offering their apologies for their previous ignorance. Some ask questions, wanting to know more about his experience, what it felt like to be subjected to the kind of racism that he had quietly endured for so long. They listen with open ears, and for the first time, the barista feels seen, heard, and understood. He feels a subtle shift in the way his colleagues view him. The divide that had once existed between him and the rest of the staff begins to blur. They start treating him as an equal, acknowledging his professionalism and his resilience. It's a small change, but it's significant. The barista begins to see a new level of respect from those who had once ignored or even belittled him. At the same time, the company, prompted by the backlash from the incident, begins to take action. The sensitivity training mentioned earlier becomes a reality. Employees are forced to confront the racism and microaggressions that are often overlooked in their everyday interactions. The sessions are uncomfortable at times, but they are necessary. The barista is asked to speak at one of these training sessions, and although nervous, he agrees. Standing in front of his colleagues, he shares his experiences, detailing the subtle and overt ways in which he has been treated unfairly. His voice, once quiet and reserved, now carries a sense of power. As he speaks, he notices the faces of his coworkers change. Some of them are shocked, others are ashamed, but all of them are listening. The barista knows that he is making a difference, even if it's just one small step at a time. However, as much as the barista feels the beginnings of a shift, the road ahead is not without its challenges. The backlash from the higher-ups, including the CEO, is inevitable. Despite the sensitivity training and the efforts to address the issues raised by the confrontation, there are still those who view the barista's actions as disruptive or out of place. Some customers continue to voice their displeasure, leaving negative reviews online or avoiding the coffee shop altogether. The tension between the barista and the upper management deepens. The CEO, humiliated by the public confrontation, begins to exert his influence behind the scenes. He subtly works to undermine the barista, questioning his professionalism and threatening to have him transferred to a less prominent location. The barista senses this shift, but instead of feeling intimidated, he remains calm and focused. He refuses to be pushed back into the shadows. In response to this, the barista reaches out to a lawyer, someone he had met during his time working at the coffee shop, who had always been kind to him and had offered help when needed. The lawyer advises him to document everything, to keep a record of any inappropriate interactions, and to be prepared for any legal battles that might arise. Though the barista is uncertain about the future, he now understands the importance of standing firm in the face of adversity. He has already taken the first step by speaking out, and now he is ready to protect his dignity and his job. This is the first time the barista has ever felt the need to take legal action. It's a reminder that even when one is doing the right thing, there are always forces in place that will attempt to suppress them. Yet, through it all, the barista's resolve grows stronger. He feels more equipped than ever to handle whatever comes next. His journey of empowerment has just begun, and while the challenges may be numerous, he is no longer afraid. Amidst the tension, something beautiful begins to unfold. As word spreads about the barista's confrontation with the CEO, the support from the community grows. It begins with a few regulars, people who have seen him work day in and day out. They start speaking out on social media, praising the barista for his bravery and for standing up to the systemic racism that many people, especially people of color, face in everyday life. The support grows organically, and soon local activists, people who are passionate about racial justice, begin to take notice. One afternoon, a group of activists enters the coffee shop, asking to speak with the barista. They express admiration for his courage and invite him to join their efforts. They want him to share his story at rallies and protests, to be a voice for those who have been silenced. At first, the barista is hesitant. The idea of becoming a public figure, a symbol for racial justice, feels overwhelming. But as he reflects on the support he's received and the changes he has already begun to see, he realizes that this is his moment to make a real difference. The barista agrees to get involved. His first public speaking event is at a small rally, where he shares his story of resilience, courage, and the importance of standing up against injustice. The crowd is moved and many are inspired by his words. He begins to see the power in his voice, and it's a feeling that he will never be able to ignore again. As he continues to speak at more rallies and protests, his presence grows more influential. He becomes a figurehead for the movement, a symbol of the quiet strength and dignity that so many people of color possess. He learns that it's not just about fighting for himself, but fighting for the community around him. As the barista's public profile rises, so does the scrutiny on the CEO. The fallout from the incident continues to haunt him, and he begins to face mounting pressure from the media and the public. Journalists reach out, eager to hear his side of the story, and many of them are critical of his actions. The barista's confrontation, once dismissed by the CEO as a minor inconvenience, has now become a major point of contention. Behind closed doors, the CEO begins to feel the weight of his arrogance. His colleagues at the company start questioning his behavior, and his reputation, once untouchable, begins to tarnish. The CEO's position becomes untenable, and after an internal investigation he is forced to step down from his role as CEO. The news spreads like wildfire, and many people celebrate this victory, an unexpected consequence of the barista's courage. For the barista, the CEO's downfall is not a moment of triumph. He doesn't gloat or celebrate. Instead, he reflects on the broader issue at hand, the systemic nature of discrimination and how the fight is far from over. The barista's focus has always been on creating change, not seeking retribution. But seeing the CEO face the consequences of his actions is a small victory, a reminder that actions have consequences, and that no one is above accountability. As the months pass, the changes within the coffee shop and the barista's life become more evident. The sensitivity training has led to a shift in how employees treat one another. There are fewer instances of microaggressions, and the atmosphere in the coffee shop becomes more inclusive. Customers, too, have begun to change. Many of them now see the barista as more than just a service worker. They see him as a person, as someone with a story, a life outside the coffee shop. The barista, once a quiet and invisible figure, has become a leader in his community. He continues to speak at rallies and events, using his platform to advocate for racial justice and equality. His voice has become a powerful tool, and with it, he has begun to affect real change in the world around him. He has learned that no matter how small a person may feel in the face of systemic oppression, they always have the power to make a difference. The barista's journey, while just beginning, has already left a lasting impact on the coffee shop, the community, and the world. He has shown that standing up for what's right, even when it feels terrifying, can lead to incredible change. His story is one of resilience, of finding strength in the face of adversity, and of using one's voice to create the world they want to see.